Welcome back to the BDGE Dynasty Fantasy Football channel. As always, I am joined with these two fucking cowards, Adam and Andrew.
Cowardice.
Today's video, I don't really know how it's going to be structured. We're going a little bit off the beaten path here. There is no scripts. There is no manuscripts. There's the this unspoken cave in Dynasty Fantasy Football where there are certain players that have a value where if you own the player, you will not give them up for a second. You will only accept a first. However, on the other side of things, the other person will only give you a second for them, right? So there's these players that, like, no one wants to give up a certain player for a lesser price, but no one wants to pay the price for that player.
Void.
It is the void.
Cave. I like that.
It's these untradeable assets, and people don't like them. People like them. I don't know where to go with this, but we have a list of players that we feel are extremely hard to trade. So we're going to go through them, talk about the tiers, talk about maybe suggestions on what to do if you have these players on your teams.
Yeah, I think let's go through it, and then if you would actually buy for it first, just say it, and we'll talk about why. But then obviously if not, what do you do? What directions would you go? What would you take back probably in value? So let's start off with the player, which Andrew and also Nick tried to move quite a bit. Yeah. Andrew in particular, how this kind of video got started or brought back to the surface. Andrew tried to move Rachaad White in a specific Dynasty league.
Guilty.
To every single one of, was it 9 or 11 other people in that league?
9, but
in a 10-team league, he offered Rachaad.
Only 4 or 5 of those teams actually had first-round picks, So,
but did you offer it for every single one of the first then, essentially?
Yeah.
So, yeah, he offered for 9.
He goes to the one guy. He's like, I'll give you Rachaad White for the 103 or the 110.
Either one.
Here's 3 options.
If you're a gambling man, tell me which one.
So basically, he gave Rachaad White out there to trade offers and allowed anyone that has a first-round pick to hit accept on it.
Yep.
9 different times, all declined.
Goodbye. So Rachaad White's a guy that I have on my Fade the Fetal team, and I wouldn't give him up for a second rounder.
Hell no.
And the market says I should be able to get a first rounder for him. However, when you send out Rachaad White for the 1, 05, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, ain't nobody hitting accept on it. This is the chasm we're talking about.
They're Matumbo in that stage.
I did get a counter of Treylon Burks and 25 thirds for my Rachaad White.
That's the kind of disrespect that these players end up
so
giving back.
So what you're telling me is that this list actually is fraudulent because you couldn't even get a second for Rachaad White.
Nope. I got Treylon Burks and 2 thirds, and I.
So let's talk about it. That counter, I think, is either disingenuous or they're just insanely low on Rachaad White.
The guy said that he didn't want to disrespect me just by hitting decline, so he decided to disrespect me by countering.
So instead of just decline, let's further disrespect.
I respect the disrespect.
Facts.
Put it that way.
That's a bar.
Any disrespect towards you is respect to me.
And he said he didn't mean to be disrespectful, and I said I didn't mean to be disrespectful, and then we kissed and made up, and now he has to accept a first, right? That's how this goes?
That's how it goes.
Now
but for other people that don't kiss their league mates, let's talk about some options when we have these players on our team.
Okay, so let me...
For the record, I do.
So let's just all admit we're not going to on our teams send out a first for Rachaad White. Is there any teams that right now you could think of that you would actually do that right now at this point in time?
I actually
no.
The more I've thought about Rachaad White, I've kind of come around to the fact that I feel good that he's going to give me an RB1 season this year. Not a high end RB1 season. If I'm in a full PPR league, running backs get a full point per reception, and I have the 112. Maybe the 111, and I feel like I really need a solid RB2, I'd think twice. I might think about it.
So
for the most part,
if you haven't had your rookie draft, the 112 in this class. Got it. Okay.
It's got to be like strict circumstances. But for the most part, in most settings, in most leagues, don't look at me like that. In most settings, in most leagues.
This is going to be insane.
That's what happens when we don't come in with any sort of direction. Most settings, most leagues, I am not going to move a first for Rachaad White. And I've tried to move him, but I can't get it back. So Rachaad White's like one of those guys where the tier down feels like it doesn't work well because he's almost at the bottom of the tier.
Right. And it basically says, to me, it kind of also says that essentially his price is being inflated perceptually to people, but it's not actually there. So the tier down probably reflects the same. So let me ask you, though, would you trade him, if we were talking tier downs just generically, at the running back position? Would you go, how far would you be willing to go down and get, let's say, a second-round pick back in value to where you felt comfortable? Andrew, can you think of anybody?
Well, I sent an offer out there in that same league, Blake Corum, and a second for my Rachaad White.
Declined?
That got declined.
Would you do that if you had Rachaad White? Would you take Corum in a second?
No. I would want Rachaad White there. that is the problem that we find here is like it needs to be the first for me to give him up, but I can't get him for.
I was actually kind of surprised that the quorum, because I felt like I was selling a little bit light, but I was like, I'm just trying to get out of Rachaad White. But
So you sent Rachaad White and got denied on that offer.
yeah, I sent White, and he was giving me quorum in a second, and he said no.
Okay, I would probably do that.
Now, see, that's what's interesting, I think, is though, when you just bring it up as you're not going to get a first back, liquid first back, or you're not going to take a second, all of a sudden you get to the tier down, probably for most people, like you're saying here, if you feel like you have the running back position solved, if you value quorum, like, why do I need to get a running back right now if I already feel like I have one in my lineup? Is probably what someone's thinking there. You're thinking, well, that's cheap enough for me to get an upgrade. So all of a sudden, there's a different conversation than just a first and a second from the beginning of a tear down. You might be able to find one there, obviously to the point of which level. So if you say quorum for you, how far would you go down if we're going to go higher than that? Let's say it's
Yeah, give me some names around.
Montgomery. Would you do it for Montgomery in a second?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I would.
Okay, then that's literally the player up from him. So
One player up from quorum?
yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay.
But I think that's to the point. Like quorum's role.
I like
quorum's
Montgomery a
roles
lot more than
uncertain.
Quorum. Yeah.
So
I'm a quorum believer.
let me ask you this then. So would you go down to, let's bring some other names into the fold that are further down the list. What about a guy like Brian Robinson in a second?
No.
Okay. Just want to make sure there's no one else that fits this. Najee Harris in a second.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's where I think like there's, again, perception is what the person, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Who has Najee Harris? Maybe that person doesn't view Najee Harris very highly.
Okay.
You can kind of go through and do a bunch of these type of things where you might be able to pull it off.
So here's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
I'm going to
We're going to rip some trade offers out right now.
I'm going to go into who has, do you know, let's see. Whoever has.
Invade the Fetal, I have
This is
him.
where we need
You
your
have Najee?
product.
Invade the Fetal, unfortunately, I do.
Okay,
That's
so
nuts.
if I gave you Rachaad White, would you give me Najee in a second? No.
He wants Najee in a second.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When push comes to shove, when you got to either hit accept or reject, people aren't making those moves.
I'm definitely the worst person to be asking for that, I would imagine. Maybe not the worst, but
Yeah.
one of the worst.
When you said he has Najee, I was like, well, this ain't going anywhere.
What about, okay, well, let's give some other names real quick. What about Aaron Jones in a second?
I'd rather have Rachaad White.
I would rather have White.
I think, yeah.
The age gap is just too big there.
Najee, Montgomery's feel good. What about Jalen Warren on the Steelers as well? Should take that in a second.
Just give me Rachaad White.
Rachaad White.
How about Tajay Spears in a second?
That's closer.
Still White.
I think
Close, but White for me.
I think I might go
Ramondre in a
Spears
second.
in a second.
Man, it kind of breaks my heart because I love Ramondre, but like I don't know if I could be more off of him in Dynasty anymore. Like he just came in old, and once the momentum starts to get squeezed out of an old running back prospect, it feels like it's very hard to regain. So
He wasn't like
I'm
an
taking
elite
White.
prospect anyway, so he was like one of those like 1 or 2 year window type of guys anyways.
So basically, in this list, we're actually kind of saying that from this standpoint, there's a few guys that meet it where you'd be willing to down tier, but a lot of times maybe you're better off exploring the other side of it here.
And what do you mean?
Like if you don't have Rachaad White on your team, for example, in a
Trying to
different
buy
team,
these players.
yeah, there could be a window where on the tier down, maybe you're better off buying on a slight tier up, depending on what you view.
Yeah,
it as.
that's what I was just thinking too. I was like, what if I could throw my second onto White? What can I get to? Do I prefer that?
Like actually, because here's the thing, I don't think I would do it, but it's really close. And then I was thinking about it on Fade the Fetal just from my team standpoint. I don't think I have. Yeah, I don't have a second. If I had a second, like it's close enough, I would consider that Najee a second. I'm not saying I would 100% do it, but I was genuinely thinking about it here, and then I'm like, I don't have a second on this team, unfortunately. So
What about Najee in a third for Rachaad White?
I would probably do that.
Like genuinely, 'cause I'm not gonna send it over, but if I did,
If you
would
sent
accept
it over
that?
right now, I would hit accept.
Okay.
Are y'all about to trade right now?
I would love to.
I don't think I would do that, but I was just curious, like where the hesitation stops on that type of trade. So it's funny because like Rachaad White owners need a first for it, but like
I'm taking White over Najee in a third.
yeah, I am too.
Yeah,
That's why I'm
for
not
sure.
sending it. But
Yeah,
I was just curious where it was going there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm genuinely right now, if I had a second, like I wouldn't have had the same vigor of accept level, but I think there's a strong chance I would take it. I just don't have a second in 25. I've already traded it.
Okay.
So anyway, I think from that standpoint, let's go cross positionally now. I think the whole idea is here, just because you can't get a liquid first, the reality of picks too.
These types of players, you just got to get creative as fuck with, pretty much.
Exactly, because
It's annoying.
There's a finite number of assets in your league.
Only we get trade
With 10
slips.
teams, there's literally 9. If you have your own first, there's 9 other firsts. There's 10 actual first round picks.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of these players. That's the thing. From the numbers perspective, there's more of the players than there are other picks.
I even tried sending Rachaad. You're going cross positionally. I tried to send him for one of the players that you actually said fits this void type of tier. I sent White for Jaden Reed, straight across, 1 for 1.
That's crazy. That's where I was going to go. Would you do that?
It got
Rachaad
declined.
White or Jaden Reed?
It got declined.
You sent Rachaad White for Jaden Reed and declined. What would you, if you have Rachaad White, would you send for Jaden Reed in this league? Fade the fetal. Let's just call it.
I want Reed.
Probably not. In that league in particular, I'm very well off on wide receivers, so I don't think I need to add him to the mix and just like have.
Let's say you're out of a startup. You're pretty, you have enough wide receivers and running backs. It's not like you're super deep at either though. Generic team. Like, what would you do on this? With the idea of contending, you're not super well built. It's early on in the Dynasty life.
Yeah, I think I actually might lean Rachaad White there.
I think that's something that if you did want to get off of Rachaad White, I think although that got declined, I think that's something that would be fair. Let's just keep
It's tough because it's like with those types of players, I feel like most people in trades are trying to get picks, and that's where like all of our minds typically go to pick first. Like, what is this guy's value
for sure
as a pick? But it's like you can't think of it valued as a pick because you're not getting a pick for them. So it feels like when you're making those trades, I don't tend to love to make like lateral trades. Like I don't like to do like 1-for-1 players.
I was just gonna say like so
if they're a tie to me in value, I'm just gonna usually just stay with the guy I have.
I was gonna say cross positionally, like it could work if the team building from each side fits, or this guy needs a running back, this guy needs a receiver. Let me ask you, like in a tear down sense, though, cross positionally now. Okay, so would you take a 2nd-round pick in Deontay Johnson for Rachaad White?
I'm gonna keep White.
I think I might go Deontay in a second.
Okay, there you go. So
I'm higher on Deontay though.
You would take Deontay in a second. You probably would stay White. How about if it was
I think this is interesting too because my attitude has changed a little bit more on Rachaad White over the last
for sure
couple of weeks where I'm okay holding on to him. He was a prospect that I was like, damn, I really want to get rid of him.
I think the best part of this is it's a combination of process, talking through some like ideas, and then also player talk too.
I have an idea also, just to not harp on Rachaad White. Why don't we like list out all of the players that we had in that just like that you had written down that were in like the cave. And then maybe that'll like spark some ideas that we want to talk through.
The whole list. Okay.
Yeah, these are guys again that fit that criteria where like if you own the player, you're not giving them up for anything less than a first. But if you're going to trade for him, you're probably not giving up a first for him.
So the first guy here we were talking about was Rachaad White. Guys similarly valued in age: Kenneth Walker, James Cook, Isaiah Pacheco. Then there's also like the next person on this list is interesting. You were talking about trading 1-for-1 Jaden Reed. Then Baker Mayfield at quarterback. Guys that also at quarterback: Kirk Cousins, Matt Stafford type beats.
Yeah, and we're not just trying to stick to like rankings or keep trade cut. We're trying to talk about like real league shit. Like if you're in a league, it's like what happens when your finger's actually on the trigger there.
If he's on my team, what am I willing to get? What am I willing to?
You can put in the comments if you think that some of these are up. But the point is, like these players, you would take a first more often than not for that player, but you would not send away for a second. You'd rather have the player.
Yeah.
Deebo Samuel. Then Josh Jacobs and DeAndre Swift, similar type builds, a little older but running backs, but are in good situations. Derrick Henry, getting older, but he's like a 101 candidate. Some of the older receivers like Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, Amari Cooper. Andrew, a little more polarizing, put on the list, Justin Fields. I think that one we could have a pretty interesting discussion on.
Have my Justin Fields third.
I'll take Justin for the third.
And then some guy like I just brought up, like further down the list, not quite as sexy or unappealing, but Christian Kirk, Chris Godwin, Deontay Johnson types.
Yeah, I agree because like right now, if I got Christian Kirk, like I kind of want him in my lineup. I'm not really interested in your like 204.
If you gave me a first for Christian Kirk, I'm gonna smash accept it
100%.
But if you gave me a second, I'm gonna smash decline it.
Yeah. So trying to get a little bit more like directionally, I guess, or a little bit more direction with this.
Okay.
So I guess the overall theme here is like you have to get more creative. 1-for-1s cross position can work, and maybe the sweet spot here is tearing down within the same position feels like it's the toughest thing to do with those players.
The tear down strategy, I feel like, has become more common and popular. So it's almost like it's too transparent. You see what Trellman's trying to do right away.
So it's like you got to go cross positionally and tear down.
Yeah,
we're 4D.
Right,
4D in this whole 4D,
right now. And then sometimes you gotta
what the hell?
Sometimes
what the hell?
If you're gonna feed the big dogs, if you're gonna feed a dog, sometimes you gotta put something on the outside of that medicine you're trying to get him to take.
That's that shit right there. Rachaad White's just the medicine pill.
Yeah, you gotta put some shit around that Rachaad White.
Some shit.
You good?
Yeah.
Are you good?
You good?
No.
I know.
Horrible.
I know. I'm looking both ways. These guys are the energy.
You
is
just got
amazing
very
right
quiet.
now.
I was just
All right, so
No, you're just saying medicine. I was just thinking I need medicine right now.
so
you
let
look
me
like it.
let me just ask you then. Let's pivot because you were just saying how Rachaad White for you've recently got a little higher on. Okay, let's use that same conversation with James Cook for a second.
Okay.
James Cook or Deontay Johnson in a second.
Cook.
I've another bad example on my part because I actually kind of really like James Cook as well.
All right. What about, let's say it was Kenneth Walker versus Deontay Johnson in a second.
Give me Kenneth Walker.
I'm going to take Walker there as well.
And I know you're really high on Pacheco too.
Yes.
So all those guys you're just high on.
Yeah, love running backs.
I love life.
Love running backs.
He's like fade them all in the startup. I want all these guys. Yeah. Are you low on Deontay specifically? Let's do some other names.
Yeah, I don't really like Deontay much.
Okay.
I like Deontay, and I said no.
All right. What about then? Let's substitute Deontay out for.
To be
what about
fair,
Terry
though,
McLaurin in a
I
second?
wouldn't have given a first for, I don't think, any of those running backs.
Okay, right.
Maybe the edge case of, like I said, Rachaad White, 11, 12 in a full PPR league kind of thing.
If you flip instead of.
You wouldn't do a first for like a Pacheco?
I think they all kind of fit into that category.
I was going to say, I feel like Pacheco to me is the most intriguing of all those running backs that we just talked about. And so if you were willing to give a first for White, you probably would have been willing to give it for maybe Walker, maybe.
They're all like similar tiers for me where it's like edge case, 11, 12, right format or whatever. But I'm not giving like the 9 for Pacheco.
What makes you say that about Pacheco, like for you, maybe ahead of the other guys in the pack?
I think I just have the most confidence in him producing fantasy points for my roster this year. I think that's why
So
am
basically
more
the
willing to
situation.
do it. Yeah. So I think because when I'm spending that first round pick and I'm buying a running back, the idea is that when I'm doing that, I'm most likely a team that's trying to win a championship, and it just gets down to where I feel like Pacheco probably outscores those guys this year.
Okay.
I agree.
What about
Eat a goat.
what about then if it was
Yeah,
instead of like if Deontay's the problem? What if it was Christian Kirk in a second? Let's say you have Kenneth Walker. Would you rather have Kenneth Walker or a second in Christian Kirk?
I don't hate that offer.
I want Walker.
You want Walker? Okay.
I might pull that trigger.
Really?
If it's tiered PPR, yeah, I might.
I tend to agree with you on that one.
I like Kirk a lot this year. I like Kirk, and I don't know about the second, but like it's a little bit of a combination of, if both players are 50-50, it's probably like Walker, I'm hesitant on, Kirk, I'm optimistic on, and that kind of like makes the cake bake. You know what I'm saying?
You baking cakes out here,
That was
baby.
fucking crazy.
Okay.
I don't know how that just came out of my mouth, but we out here.
And you said no. What if it was? Are you higher on Kirk or Godwin?
Kirk than I am Godwin.
Okay. All right. So
I'm higher on Deontay, though, than both those guys.
and you said you would take it for Godwin or for Deontay, correct? You'd be interested in Godwin or would you be interested in that other side if it was Deontay Johnson or no?
Deontay and a second for Kenneth Walker. Mm-hmm. I probably still take Kenneth Walker.
Okay. Well, I guess the point was, though, to you, it would be better with Deontay in it. With
Yes.
you, it would be better with Christian Kirk in it. I think the point why I want to walk through this is like,
So maybe
the point is, if you're doing this with your league mates and you're actually having back and forth, you might be able to find threading that needle where they value things different. Keep trade cut overall is going to say something.
Yeah. So
right?
maybe we're just working through the solutions here. We're gonna find a solution by the end of this video. I promise. We're not just
We're
yapping
all going to
for no
trade
reason.
a bunch of times.
So maybe you take the same approach. We go cross position, down tier, and we take the same approach that Andrew took with the machine gun, where you're doing that, but with like 8 trades that you're comfortable with into your league.
Correct.
You
If
find the tier of Christian Kirk's, and then you rip those trade offers and see what happens.
Go to the Deontay manager, the Christian Kirk manager, the
Right.
Godwin
As long as you're
manager.
comfortable with them, right?
Yeah,
Because
you
like
make
for
the
me,
ones
the
that you
Deontay, not as much. Kirk,
Yeah.
cool for me. But yeah, I think
Godwin?
that's a good
No.
plan.
No, like for example, if you're in
But
that,
yeah, I get it.
if you're in that scenario, you have either too much value
about
stored up in the running back position, or you're like, man, I really don't have much on the bench. You want to get it down tier. Maybe that's a thing you rip out 10 different offers like that. Guys in the same range that you're willing to go to. In particular, you look, maybe some team has like 7, 8 receivers, and they're like, all right, I could probably get off a Kirk. I could get off a Godwin type, something like that. I think that's something you can definitely do. And
We're here.
ultimately, you could probably do the same thing from the flip side. If you're like, man, I bet you Rachaad White right now isn't going for a first. I don't have to pay a first. Can I get, if I have a bunch of receivers, can I get to him with 3 different offers to that manager?
Yep.
So I think these are things that I tend to try to do. I'm basically trying to find the pressure point. What's the guy?
Adam out here telling us he knew the answer the whole time already. He just didn't want to tell us. He goes, "This is what I be trying to do."
But like, that's in a process. Sometimes you just find out by talking, or like you see an offer come across. It's like, this guy just is really low on Deontay Johnson. But that's kind of the whole process. Let me ask you then, Baker Mayfield. Let's talk quarterbacks, because quarterbacks in Superflex, I think, gets it even further tricky because it's a scarce position.
Yeah.
Let's talk Baker for a second. I know you didn't want to, but
See,
Don't do it.
I do think there's
we did say Baker.
there's
He's
more of an
baking cakes out
attachment. There's
Facts.
QBs I think are harder to move without getting a first in return. Or I think it's harder to secure a quarterback without giving up a first in return.
To your point, it's hard if you're not getting a quarterback back in the trade, right? So a down tier or up tier.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to just send away a quarterback that could be a starter without getting a first in Superflex.
And I'm much
Facts.
less likely to sell you my quarterback unless I'm getting that first or another quarterback back.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Exactly.
So there's probably a different solution than just the cross position, because cross position quarterback is the most valuable position. So going cross hurts that value even more.
Well, and you have to be very unique roster to do that, because you have to have an excess amount of quarterbacks to just get rid of one without getting it back in return.
Right. So that goes to the point of, all right, let's say you have, I don't want to go down the whole quarterback hoarding. Well, we can a little bit, but let's say you don't have a true quarterback hoard, right? Let's say you have 3 or 4. You have a fair amount of quarterbacks, a standard room, but a little bit of excess, not like tons to get off of. And you're willing to actually send Baker away without getting a quarterback back. What would you be looking for if it wasn't a first round pick? Like, think creatively, like, again, positionally. What type of level of player do you need to be at in a package even to consider it?
See, this is where it gets like interesting, because in a startup draft, where's Baker going?
Late 7.
Late 7. That's like where, I don't know, not great receivers or running backs are going, but you never give Baker up for the guys that are getting drafted
My
there.
thought was, as soon as you said that, like, I thought same team. I was like, Mike Evans. Give me Mike Evans.
They're going in the same range, actually. Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Give me Mike Evans. I'll give you Baker if I don't need Baker. But the reality is I probably need Baker if it's
The crazy part about that, though, is that while I agree, I think if I was doing that and I was trying to get, like, if someone has Evans, if I can sell Baker in this scenario to the Evans person, the idea of getting the stack with it might even help the chances of sealing the deal. Although I agree with you, Evans is probably a player.
But I'm like, if I just need
that's a good point out, just to say, if you're trying to move the quarterback, maybe look at the teams that you can kind of push the stack.
Right, like this team has a weak quarterback too, right? That's probably who you're looking for first. And now it's okay, but they have Evans. All right, maybe there's a chance this stack is a little more appealing than just Baker would be to any person in my league.
Well, we talked about that with that trade that I was talking to you about in there, where it was probably worth eating the value that I was going to lose in the Henry DJ Moore deal just because I already had Caleb Williams on the roster. So it was like, I get a stack of DJ Moore and Caleb Williams. So.
Right. And you said it didn't make the deal overall like super more valuable,
my opinion,
but it was like a cherry on top.
But it was like, this helps too.
Facts. Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask from the running back position. Like, is there a scenario is that position to the point like running backs are kind of dead in value? Is that a positional crossover that you won't even do unless it's out of the range of realistic?
The value gap's crazy.
I'm not trading my quarterback for a running
Baker
back.
Mayfield. Let's just
like, would you trade Baker for Pacheco? Like
that's what I'm asking.
That's what I was thinking, and I'm like, you're probably not doing that, even though they're getting drafted 2 full rounds apart.
Yeah,
which is insane. Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So if I even remotely need Baker, I'm not.
So let's say Baker's your quarterback 3, and you have let's just make a more realistic scenario. Baker's your quarterback 3 that's solid. Your quarterback 4 is dicey, like a Geno Smith, Daniel Jones, Russell Wilson type. You don't even know for sure if they make it through the year.
You're like literally talking about my Fade the Fetal team.
That's exactly what I just did.
Yeah, I can tell. That team. This is actually a good example because I think my team in that is like Baker.
You have Geno and Baker though, don't you?
Geno, Baker, Bryce Young. Like I have all these fringe. QB2s.
But I think there's teams that could be realistically in that scenario. So now, in order for you to go to that uneasy place at QB3, sending away Baker, you're not doing it for Rachaad White, Kenneth Walker, James Cook, Isaiah Pacheco? Any one of those guys?
Not if, like, in my scenario, I need Baker. So, like, the value, just it being like a value win is not enough for me.
Okay.
Roster construction just comes into such a more important factor when you're talking about quarterbacks.
Yes.
I love to use that word, and I think that's very true. So let me ask you then.
Dub me.
At the receiver, let's go. You thought we weren't going to cook. Would you go to Jaden Reed for Baker Mayfield here?
Probably not.
Also unlikely. Yeah.
Okay. Would you go to Deebo Samuel in this scenario here?
Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
My mind went to maybe. We're getting there.
So, but like that point
you started Cook here.
That's a 5th round pick versus like a 7th, realistically. Just to give you an idea of in a startup.
That's the QB boost.
But when all of a sudden you get out of the startup, like, yeah, the QB without getting one back is going to have a little bit of a tax to it typically.
And I mean, it further.
That's why we
cements-
said, like in last video, the Dynasty startup, it's like there's never a cheaper time than the startup.
And it just further cements the fact that startup values are not actual player values in your league. That's just the order in which you draft them to start a league. That is not, I mean, that's literally what startup ADP is. But
then a new market happens.
Then it doesn't matter. Once the startup is over, that valuation does not matter.
So, well, I think that there's a lot of players where it lines up just fine. But I think the biggest thing is if you can spot the difference in the startup versus post-startup market, when you see there's big differences, those are guys that are either polarizing or way misvalued because of the position they play, the running back.
Do you guys ever do auction Dynasty drafts? I was going to say, because that feels like it literally just tackles this problem.
You know what's so funny about auction? Now, this year...
I've never done one.
Auction,
I want to do one.
I did a ton of auction last year. Now this year the market has changed a little bit, so I'd be curious. I've done one this whole year, but in auction in Superflex, the interesting part about this, the starting quarterbacks almost always go for more than the skill players. And if you think about that just in the lens of where we're drafting the quarterback position as a whole now, it's like that price difference where you have to always pay most for the quarterback in auction. Now you can get your quarterback too in around 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. It's so different than reality.
Because like you were saying, it's like the draft order makes there be an order to it. Like it has to have a slot for everybody, whereas an auction, it's a free market, so it actually sets the correct price.
For example, last year, a really good example of this. Last year, Bijan was the 101 in the rookie draft pretty much holistically. In every single auction I did, which was like 5 or 6 of them, Bijan Robinson never went for more dollars than C.J. Stroud, Anthony Richardson, or Bryce Young.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is interesting.
You just think about that from that lens. Like, that's insane to think about how different that is.
I'm dealing with that now because we did a startup not too long ago, and like you'll go to trade people and they'll be like, well, I just drafted this guy in the 5th round of the startup. And I'm like, I don't care where you drafted him. That's not the value.
That's like me to you when you show me your underdog team.
Yeah, Nick's like, I don't care about this team,
I don't care about your construction.
So, okay, so you're saying, like, that I guess is the question now with Baker. You basically you're saying because he's a quarterback and it's a scarce position, you're not willing to take the package back. I need to basically get higher up the rung to Deebo Samuel or higher. I'm just staying with my quarterback.
Yeah, I almost feel like with QBs, right? So like if I'm moving Baker, I'm almost trying to disguise him. I'm trying to tier up in Baker. There's no tiering down at QB from a guy in that void. Like you're not tiering down to a guy who might start half the year. Like you're just guessing, like a Minshew or something like that. You can only really tier up. And I do think maybe tiering up does mask that like void value a little bit, right? Because the player's getting a quarterback and then you're throwing a second part into it. Maybe it's the idea of throwing like the QB, a cross-positional player, and a pick, which really starts like jumble the value.
That was what I was
just
going to say. So like if you think about it, I kind of think about it this way. You go Coinstar, right? Nobody wants to deal with change, but there's a place that actually just takes free money to take all that change and take it to the bank, essentially. You're just kind of playing the market from both lenses. You're probably unlikely to get higher than Deebo or Deebo type for Baker straight up right now when no one has a need to necessarily do that, right?
I don't want my roster to be a Coinstar, man.
But the point is if you know where you can take the money and get the full dollars, isn't that the whole idea? You're getting paid on top of it for that.
I just don't want to collect the change.
That's exactly the point, though. It's convenience. That's why everybody pays the 9% to Coinstar, because no one wants the change.
I'm people who pay 9% to Coinstar.
But that's the point. If you're willing to do the dirty work, you can be the person that reaps all the rewards, too. So I guess the question is, on this counterpoint, would you be willing to send your Baker away for a second and... Let's just add a second to that Jaden Reed offer you guys said no to.
Reed in a second?
Yeah.
I don't need quarterback?
Yes, it's the same. It hasn't changed.
Let's say Baker's likely going to be...
Your QB3, right?
Your QB3 maybe in your roster sometimes.
Right.
My QB4 is Geno, whatever.
Let's say he's like your 2B.
Yeah.
Right?
Like,
you have your QB.
You have Bryce Young and Baker as your super flex options.
Like whoever your second QB is, like Baker's in the mix, like you'll be streaming probably between those two. So Baker's a part of your plan for the upcoming year.
There you go. I like that call. Yeah.
Doesn't mean like if you send him away, you still have a second quarterback, but Baker like makes your team more secure.
That's a good point for
think
context.
The Reed in the second, I'm okay taking that. And you shouldn't have said Bryce Young because I love that guy. I'm definitely gonna rock with Bryce Young QB2.
Okay, Derek Carr.
Give me Baker.
Okay, so you'd rather have Baker than Jaden Reed in the second there?
If Derek Carr is my QB2, yeah.
Okay. What if it was Will Levis?
I feel better.
Instead of Bryce.
I'll go to the Jaden Reed. It comes down to roster construction. That's what this is.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, if we go, let's say that your roster construction is okay. So you have Bryce Young you feel good about.
Yeah, I feel good about him.
Would you take, like, how far down can we go with this is basically the question. So if we go past Jaden Reed, will you take an older receiver like Mike Evans in a second?
Yeah.
Would you take Mike Evans in a third?
No.
Would you take Devontae Adams in a second?
Probably not.
I think I might.
Sorry, Devontae.
What about Amari Cooper? This is probably a no for you since you already said no to Devontae.
I think I would.
What if it was those guys that you said yes? If you in this scenario feel good about it, would you take them in a third? Devontae Adams in a third, Mike Evans in a third.
That's, I think, where
The third is too much.
The third becomes
almost
invaluable
makes
here.
Yeah, the third almost makes it now just
It's noise.
Flip. Yeah.
I gotcha. But the second is a tax. You're willing to take that on. I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. What about, again, to this list of Christian Kirk and Deontay Johnson types that are a little further down for a lot of people?
Nah.
That's going to be a tougher sell for me for sure.
Okay. No there. All right.
I need to know that I feel like that the guy that I'm getting is going to be a kind
Impactful?
of like, at least has like the difference making ability off the rip,
Yeah.
even if it's for 1 year.
That's fair. I think then at QB, to your point, let me just ask you, if you were in the same scenario, would you be willing to, I know the down tier sounds crazy because Baker Mayfield technically has a contract, you feel more secure there, but would you trade in that scenario like you already have your quarterback 4 is Geno Smith or Daniel Jones? Would you be willing to take a second and like Russell Wilson back though? Now you have 2 bets that you have a quarterback 3.
For Baker?
Yeah.
I don't hate it, but I just would rather have Baker.
So just like so that's like the straight down tier.
Yeah, so like it feels very unsexy because you're like, man, those guys are gross. But realistically, you're netting a second. Now you have 2 shots at.
I don't really hate that.
Yeah.
You still lean Baker though, huh?
I do.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think like if that showed up in my inbox, I'd probably hit reject.
Well, because I think, again, the whole idea here is trying to think about it from multiple lenses of the value. So if that's close to you, what if that was Christian Kirk now and Russell Wilson? Because, again, the valuation could be different for everyone with their players. So is there a scenario where that down tier actually makes sense for you if you're netting a plus that helps your lineup more? Is that the case for you? Is basically I'm trying to find out.
It's interesting.
I probably am more likely to accept Christian Kirk and the Russell Wilson.
Because it's a player versus a pick?
I think so.
That's what I was saying. Like when you move the QBs, it's like almost like you need to mask the fact that you're not getting a first.
Correct.
For them.
Correct.
You're not giving a first for it. So it's like you need to start attaching names instead of like picks to it.
Because Kirk's already kind of like that void player where we kind of feel like he might be worth a first, but he's not.
Right.
And then you get the Russell Wilson thrown in, so it's like you feel like you're getting first of value.
2 almost firsts.
Yeah.
Well, that's I think literally I guess I'm in a way in a fun discussion, but with players, it's like trying to talk about it from a full circle thing where Christian Kirk, like you said, isn't necessarily worth that, but you want Christian Kirk instead of the second.
Yes.
But now let's say that offer was a second, and you know because you've done a lot of trading or talking with players in your leagues, I can probably get a Christian Kirk type for this second I'm getting back in that trade, right? Like you said, you'd rather have Christian Kirk. But if I know you have that feeling, I'll take the second and just flip it to you, vice versa. You see what I'm saying?
I am
kind of thinking about it as a whole circle lens.
I am the Coinstar guy, though, where I don't want to have to go put in the extra deal. Just give me Christian Kirk now.
That's fine too. I just think from a talking standpoint, the more you think about that type of stuff, the more like creative you'll get with
basically
random shit.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's like these void players are a fucking problem, and like you got to be willing to put the work in if you want to make the moves here. You have to be willing to get a little bit creative. You got to think through this. I mean, we're doing the thinking for you, but these are the types of offers that you got to be sending if you want to make these moves.
You can literally just watch this video and go send all the offers Adam is saying right now just to see.
It's kind of therapeutic, to be honest.
I kind of want to.
I don't know if they're going to be. Like,
I know
this is ridiculous.
We were going to say no young players, but I just want to add this into the mix right now because it's June and because especially right now, a lot of these guys are everyone's.
I only said no rookies
high.
because you have basically a direct value swap of where the rookie is and their draft pick, rather than like the Jaden Reed. Just like I don't know where he'd go in a rookie draft right now.
I guess the reason I wanted to bring him in last, just briefly, is that now we thought about all those other players. What's happening? Actually,
No, you just focus. I'm just hanging him.
Okay. Let's say you have.
What the hell?
If you had Keon Coleman right now, because you hate him and we don't, would you basically want to hold that lotto ticket, or would you be willing right now if you needed depth to get Christian Kirk in a second right now?
For Keon.
Yeah.
Give me Christian Kirk in the second.
I would easily take Kirk in a second.
What about Kirk in a third?
No, I'll take Keon. I think it gets to when you say third, I'm just like I don't care. I don't care about a
Right.
third.
Then it just becomes Kirk for.
It's a penny versus a nickel or something.
Yeah,
We're too far down. I don't want this shit.
Yeah.
Because we were just talking about in that league where I'm posting guys on the auto trade block like Juju and hoping I can get a third. That's the value of that third.
With that information, very helpful. Let's do this. Keon Coleman in a third for Christian Kirk in a second. So now you get off of your third that you don't care about to get the full second back. Obviously, you guys both said you'll take Christian Kirk in a second, correct?
Yes.
Now let's say you have to add a third back in. Does that change it for you at all?
You don't need my third. That's unnecessary for you to get that in this deal.
You just told everybody openly you didn't want that shit.
I don't want
That's fine
yours.
for me.
I want mine.
It's fine for you, right?
That's fine. For
Yeah, I'll throw it in to get the deal.
the moving down
Yeah.
is something I put no value into, even though I know it's not a no value, but it is something that I look at and like don't.
But like, I guess
I'll throw them in. I'll throw a third in anywhere just to get a deal done if it gets it across the line.
I guess the point is there, like if the second is too much of a smash, someone's probably going to say no to that. Sometimes you can get a pick swap there.
Yeah.
You're right. The pick swap has made me think differently about deals a little bit before because it makes you feel like you're getting. Makes you feel like the third
not
is now
losing it.
right.
It's
The
a 2 for
third is
2.
now worth something where before it was worth nothing.
Because guess what we were talking about earlier is like the tear down seems to be almost too easy to spot. This is a 2 for 2 almost in a way. It's a tear down with a little bit of shit on it.
We're tearing down on picks now.
Right.
We're not even on tear down on players.
It's a double tear down.
We're moving 5D right now.
Duh.
I don't know how much longer I could. We might figure out what the purpose of fucking life is by the end of this damn episode.
If that's possible, y'all may never see me again.
Promise.
I wish I had that much
figure
confidence.
this shit out there.
All right, let's talk about Justin Fields because Andrew, I think at this one is higher than us on the player. But
Yes.
let's talk through it. You said for Justin Fields for you would obviously none of us are going to buy Justin Fields for a first, correct?
No, I'm not doing that.
You said you would not be selling for a second, probably, correct?
I wouldn't sell for any second. I would sell for some seconds. Like if it's 201, 202, 203, probably sell.
Okay.
But if like somebody's like, hey, give me that 208 and I'll give you Justin Fields, I'm probably gonna give you that 208.
Okay. I get what you're saying. What do you think there in that scenario?
Like he said, he'd give me Fields for his third, and I'll buy Fields for the third all day long.
That was just
joke,
like
but
That was facetious.
but it wasn't far off.
I'm like for a third, fuck yeah.
He was kind of playing.
208 is probably that borderline for me. If it gets cheaper, I'm probably gonna buy Fields, but like I'm not overly excited to give up really anything for third. Is obviously a smash
So,
because thirds or whatever. But
The 208, I think there's two ways to look at this for me anyway. The 208 is the expiration of that being a pick to a player is close. So I really view that more like if we get back to the conversation of now Xavier Legette, Ricky Pearsall, the guys that I'm probably taking there. It's like, would you rather have that player versus that pick?
Yeah.
So, but if you go to a 25-second liquidity, let's call it, like this does, you can have a
It's a
second.
25 second?
Yeah, 25-second or Fields now.
Just give me Fields.
I'm probably gonna take the pick. It's a
taking-
random pick.
I'm taking the pick too. So let me just kind of talk through why or what the way you're viewing Fields.
I think I just view him as a guy that I've seen enough fantasy football upside from that in a position where in a super flex league, we've talked about the scarcity of the position, how important it is, that QB tax that you have to pay. If I can get a guy who can, when he starts, has the ability where we've already seen him give us top 12 numbers, QB1 numbers at the position, hell, I might not be able to get
It's a good lotto
top
ticket to take a
12
chance on,
guy
right.
for a second round pick.
It's not like taking a lot of chance on like some slot wide receiver. You're taking a chance that like if all of them get on the field at the same time. Like Fields will give you crazy upside.
Yeah. And so it's like I'm just going to take the lotto pick there because at the end of the day, like if I lose that second round pick in 25 and Fields doesn't see the field, it's not going to break my roster. It doesn't really matter long term. Like it's a second round pick. Most of those guys miss anyways, so it is what it is.
Let me ask you then. You were talking a little bit in there. You view it similar to Penix, like what your viewpoint on that?
Yeah. I was saying like I don't really view because we were talking about it in comparison to this year's class, and I just don't view Fields much differently than that tier of where Michael Penix and Bo Nix were kind of being drafted in rookie drafts. Like I feel like if Justin Fields could have been drafted in a rookie draft, you probably cement him right in there with those guys. So I feel like they're essentially the same bet. Justin Fields, again, we've seen it before. We haven't seen it from Penix. We know we got to wait for both of those guys. Maybe Justin Fields is a shorter wait than Michael Penix. But, yeah, we probably have a little bit of a shorter wait for Justin, maybe even two.
For Fields, then Penix.
Would you take Fields over Penix straight up?
No.
Where do you think Fields would go in the rookie draft right now?
I guess for me, I don't view it that way. Although everything you talk about from the lotto standpoint, like if he is the starting quarterback for Pittsburgh, sure, like the upside for him. We've seen the rushing ability. I get the standpoint of what he means to fantasy football rosters if he's playing. I guess the big difference for me is the Steelers' level investment to him is not anywhere near the investment that the Bo Nix was just drafted at 12 or that Penix was at 8. For example, the wait on Penix could be longer than Fields. I get what you're talking about from the standpoint of him being a lotto type ticket, and if he's playing, like the upside we saw with Fields is tremendous. The level of investment that Pittsburgh has in him, like the wait for Fields could be shorter than Penix, but it depends on Russell Wilson probably not playing well and them having to put Fields in the lineup. Like there's a real scenario where if Russell Wilson is playing football at a high enough level, that Fields doesn't actually see the field for me. So because of the level of investment they have in him, and to me, there's a realistic scenario where Justin Fields is viewed as a higher or sexier bet, but it's really the same thing as what we had with Trey Lance when you were buying him this time last year.
How many QBs have we seen be a starter for like at least a year, maybe a little bit more than that, ended up going elsewhere, and like at the time of it, in your mind, you're like, yeah, I'd put significant money that at some point or another he gets like another chance to be the starter, and it didn't happen. I'm just trying to think about situations. I think about like Jameis. When Jameis left the Bucks, I'm like, yo, he played horribly, obviously, sometimes. His stats were great. Like, I'm like, He's shown enough, number 1 overall pick back in the day. Like, he's done enough on his NFL resume that I'd put money that at some point or another he, like, wins out the job to be a starter somewhere. Didn't happen. Like, how many times does that happen? How many situations have we seen over the last, decade where there's been a player like that where, it just kind of fell through?
I think there's probably quite a few of them, to be honest. Because what happens is then you just don't remember. They don't become relevant anymore. Jameis Winston, obviously. Now, he got the opportunity with New Orleans and then got hurt.
To be the starter at the beginning of the year?
Yeah. I'm almost positive.
Okay. I know he's came into games, obviously. I always thought it was because of most of the injuries, but I think you might be right there.
I'm trying to think of, scenarios here.
Darnold.
But I guess that's kind of the point to me is, like, you look at guys that were drafted in the first round. Carolina gave him a shot, but then Darnold all of a sudden now as a journeyman. I think that Fields,
Baker,
we like to now, but
I think Darnold's actually a great.
I mean, I think there's ranges of outcomes. I'm not saying Fields is destined to stay on the sideline and guaranteed to not play, but there's a range of outcomes where we like the upside of Fields. We saw what he did for fantasy rosters, and we're kind of attached to that, but there's a scenario where he doesn't really start for 3 seasons.
Well, let me ask you this then. Like, he gets put into the Darnold situation. Whatever fucking team he's on at the time, they're like, Justin Fields getting the start next week. Does your mind immediately go to, like, I'm going to try to sell him high over the next month?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I think that's where everybody kind of goes.
Interesting. Yeah. So I guess, all right, so I get the...
Let Justin go out there and score 25 points because he ran for 80 on the ground, and I'm selling for a first anywhere I can get it.
I think that's the thing about it that's so interesting to me is, like, at least the way I view it, I get what you're saying for 100%. To me, it's like, all right, the risk and reward, although the reward certainly can pay off if he's playing, like, I'd rather just probably get the second if I can, where we talked about the pick. The upside is like, all right, now if Fields is playing, if I could sell for a first, sure, but I bet you more often than not, the reward is just putting him in my lineup and letting that rushing
That's what I was going to say.
Do
like,
the play.
If you waited for the time for him to be like that prolific scorer, it's like, do you just kind of let him ride out? But it's a tough conundrum because it's like, how long does this shit last for? Is it the Darnold effect? Does he just go out and play poorly again, and now he never gets a chance?
I think it also depends on how I acquired Fields on my roster.
Really?
Like if I bought him,
You did it for the 208.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If I bought him for the 208, I think I'm almost more inclined to be okay with him just sitting on my roster giving me those points because I bought him low. But if I was somebody who didn't trade for Fields, but I had Fields on my roster where maybe I had the investment early on, it cost me a little bit more. Now I'm looking to get out and kind of recoup the investment that I had before.
Damn.
Does that make sense?
I mean, yeah, it does make sense. I at least try to almost always play opposite of that, where it's like I try to stay away from sunk cost fallacy, whether that is like me. For example, if I got a player for free, like Puka Nacua last year, like you could have been like, well, I'm getting a free second to trade him away, and you now looked at like, damn, I got a second, but I basically what I'm saying is the world that we live in today is different than yesterday, and I try to stay in the present as far as like, is this a better decision for my team now? Not what did I do 6 months ago or 3 months ago or yesterday even. That's the way I try to view it. But to your point, I get it 100%. I think a lot of people play that way too. If in that scenario, Fields is starting and someone will pay a liquid first, it's going to come down to roster construction. Do I have the quarterbacks to do it? But a lot of times I'm probably just going to cash out. Because, again, Fields, I think, is one of these players where he could end up being really relevant for fantasy. But with the Steelers having no level investment, is he going to continue to be the starter long term? Like, he's a guy that could continue to be a journeyman where you don't know.
Because if he becomes a journeyman, his, like, stints where he's in the games are going to be so valuable for you. It's like imagine Gardner Minshew was running for 60 yards a game. You'd value him. Like, even if you weren't even sure if he was going to start anywhere ever again, you're like, yeah, he probably plays like 6 games a year. Like, that's kind of a nice fucking 6 games to just have there. So, like, his value might, like, that actually, that might actually make the case for the fact that, like, Fields is probably a good investment.
Think about how some people currently view Trey Lance. Like, we never even really saw him do anything, but some people are still like, Trey Lance has all this untapped potential.
There's no way anyone's giving up more than like a late third for Trey.
No, but I'm saying, like, there's people in your leagues who believe in Trey Lance because he showed us just a tiny little thing of rushing upside. And to think that, like, Justin Fields, who's already shown us elite upside for fantasy football purposes, people are going to be crazy anytime he gets in and plays some football games.
Yeah. If he's like a journeyman backup, like, he'll have his stints, and it's just like, he's like a sick. It was like owning fucking cross positionally. Like, if you own like Gio over the years, it's like every time Joe Mixon got hurt, it's like sick. I got like an RB1 randomly in my lineup, but I don't know how often I want to play him. But like Fields is that, but at the quarterback position,
people were stashing Alexander Madison for the Dalvin Cook years.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think now obviously this could totally vary widely on how you view Fields, the situation. I think just the way Pittsburgh is, the way that their coaching staffs vary. They always get the team. They have a winning team, and so I think there's a real scenario on the situation that Russ is just a problem for Fields actually getting on the field. And now I'd rather just have the liquid pick. The upside for Fields is versus the pick is not even close. I just think that we could be looking a year from now like, yeah, we saw that with Fields, but when do we see him play again? And that's the problem for me. But to the point, you're not getting it first.
Yeah, I just feel like the way that I view it with Fields is if I'm willing to take a 25-second now, next year if he doesn't play, Fields is a free agent.
Right.
Somebody's going to believe that Justin Fields is going to get signed to go play somewhere, and I can get a 25-second next year.
Well, hey, the only problem is that was kind of the scenario this year. It was like, well, Fields is good enough to be a starter somewhere.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, and how many of these quarterbacks have we had that narrative for, and then it just doesn't actually do that?
But what I'm saying, though, is like, you don't think one person in your league will give you a random 25-second for Justin Fields next year?
So let me ask you this then, because this is a perfect segue to circle this back to kind of finish up the video here. To me, there's a range of outcomes with Fields where obviously the reward, to your point, like you could maybe probably sell for a first if he has the job for the rest of the year and he's playing because he's such a lead upside. Right now, though, I think in a second, when you go back and think about all the different ways I could package a second and Kirk and all those other, like I can basically take a second and find somebody that's going to give me that trade value now and probably get a positional starter, maybe not Fields level of upside, but helps my team and helps me keep that conundrum going of players. There's so many players that are just not worth, or people won't pay a true first for. And this second is not a first, but it gets me into a conversation of up tiering, down tiering, and basically putting it into my war chest. Where Fields is like, you got to find a believer, or you got to wait till he's on the field.
Yeah,
that's at least the way.
Am I a believer?
You love Fields.
I am.
Are you?
Apparently, I'd buy him for a second.
I mean, there's not a right or wrong.
I guess that makes me a believer.
Dub.
I moved him for
crazy.
You got Watson in a third. Yeah. Christian Watson in a third. Yeah. Would you take Christian Watson in a third or Justin Fields?
I'll take Justin Fields. I don't like Christian Watson at all.
Yeah, I don't love it looking back on it.
I sold Justin Fields for the 110.
Context, though, again, is king, where it's like you have Bryce Young, Baker Mayfield. You have a bunch of quarterbacks on that team still, right?
Not
Geno Smith.
Ones. Yeah.
But like you,
that's why I probably should have held on.
Did you say not good ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did say not.
You just
good
have
ones.
all the bad ones.
Yes.
Is that all you have? I'm trying to remember.
I don't even know. I don't know what I have on my team.
That's how bad they are.
Phoenix and shambles.
I have so many good. No, this is that bullshit though. I have so many good skill players. I can't package Baker Mayfield and George Pickens and a second for like anyone worthwhile. People just don't want to hear it. Tony, main fucking culprit over there. It's not in here, but
Tony's out here quarterback.
Tony's right there.
Yeah, you
That's
cunt.
fair.
Cunt. Give me fucking. Actually,
I mean, I guess
trying to get to us.
I guess takeaways are like. I guess the big takeaways here for me are, and I'm curious what you guys are like. There's going to be a ton of players that always fit this narrative. I think the majority of players, like there's I don't know 50 players you could put in this list.
It's basically every player from like round 5 through round 9,
and
like every relevant fantasy player.
You could
basically every player in Dynasty is not fun to roster now.
Well, but like I guess
I don't even have fun playing no more.
Damn. Fuck this.
We all want to quit.
End this shit? Fuck.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Fuck this.
But like, you could sit here and say, "Oh, well, I can't get a first," and try to send all of these offers, or you could try to, I guess, look at it creatively before you just cry about having Rachaad White on your team. And like, that's the way.
I'm out here
that's the realistic.
doing a whole podcast about crying.
That's realistic.
Rachaad White is just gonna die on my roster now.
Good.
Yep.
Just
like I almost died right here on this couch during this video.
Yeah.
You did.
That was bad.
I think. Are you okay?
I'm good. I got that cough drop. I'm good now.
You really did just get into a big Justin Fields.
Fuck it, Justin Fields.
Why did we talk about Justin Fields? I didn't even want to. He did.
Yeah.
No. When we were making this list, you told me to put Justin Fields on here.
He's sneaky, wants Fields.
He does.
I want Fields for the third, like Nick said.
Any third, baby.
Could have got him from me.
Get the hell out of here, man.
We love y'all. Let us know if you like the context, the discussion in this format, or if you hate it. Either way, there's nothing you can do about it. We love you.
Ain't.